Teresa, do you know what happened to, do you know what's going on with,
We're about to be live.
I'm sorry?
do you know what's going on with Gene Sullivan? He took extended leave from the city. Do you know what's going on?
He's had some illness, medical
he has?
issues. Yeah,
Huh.
he's had a lot of medical issues, a lot of hard time.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
He basically
That's been
should be
going on a
dead.
while?
We are live now on YouTube.
Oh,
yeah, I know there's some other, we'll talk about it once the meeting is in depth, because there's some other changes that have happened. Teresa might enlighten us with the administrative assistant stuff.
Okay.
So, all right, so we are live, and so we can start our meeting. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. It's
All righty.
7:07 p.m. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
Thank you.
Flag.
To the flag
America,
of the United
and
States of America,
for which it stands,
which
one
stands
nation,
under
under God, indivisible, with liberty, and justice for all.
justice for all.
Okay, first item, entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our February 2nd meeting.
Second.
Okay, made
So
by Bill
moved.
Dyer, seconded by Jim Tate. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just note that because I put it on our agenda, we had several minutes that were missing from the city website, and those have all been corrected and posted.
Oh,
So
they
we're all
have.
good with that. Yep. And I see now Ed McCreary is joined us too.
Word.
So Ed, we
Hello,
just
Ed.
did our Pledge of Allegiance and approved the minutes. So Teresa, Natural Resource Manager, General Report, Garden Committee, Litter Committee, what do you have to say?
Edward, clean shaven.
What?
Go ahead.
Litter committee actually had a meeting.
Wow.
It was the first meeting since February of 2020. So that was good. Got that going again. One of the things we're working on now is to create a top 10 list of areas in Shelton that need attention. The most littered areas. So if you have any ideas, email them to me.
Isinglass Road.
Yeah. We had a couple of representatives from, there's a group called Shelton Cleanup Project. They really organized on Facebook, but they've had a number of cleanups where a lot of people show up and they just choose a look, kind of like the Shelton Trails committee, where they just have a work party and people show up, and they've done quite a few of these. So that's good. And I have the patches have been received. There's a fox on them. Nickeldale Farm, I think I posted that I'd done a blog post just to kind of get that in the clouds, because otherwise all that information is just lost to time, and it's in some file, and then the files get archived and then everybody loses it. So if you do a blog post on something like that, then it's always out there. Garden, we're registering the gardeners. An issue did come up with the Trails Committee. I don't know if this should be under the Trails or Garden or whatever, but Allison Menendez and the Trails Committee want to do a nice little shade garden on that slope above the Trails barn. And so Allison was looking for a budget to buy ferns and so forth. And the Trails Committee had recommended $350.
I think it's just so you know, Bill, I muted you because there was some background noise from, I assume, at Highland. There is some activity that Allison has done in the past over in that area with some.
Well, the whole big shade garden.
Has Allison indicated that would be an appropriate amount for the materials?
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have a line item that covers that?
Sure. Land improvements.
There you go. So
Okay.
entertain a motion to budget that amount that was mentioned from land improvements for the purposes around the new Trails barn. Do we have a name for that barn, by the way? It's called Trails Barn for now.
This is Trails Barn.
Okay. So motion made by Jim Tate, seconded by, did I say Edmund McCreary's hand? Terrific. Any questions about that? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay.
unanimous, thank you.
French's Hill did some selective clearing at the entrance. There's a nice little concrete pond there. The selective clearing I was doing is there's a lot of invasive species came up. This is that area that was, what was the name of that development, Tom?
This is near the Eckland area,
Not Eckland. Did I say Eckland? French's Hill.
French's Hill. Oh, that was the Toll Brothers development.
Yeah. What's that called? There's a little piece
The
that we
Vista of
got.
White Hills?
Yeah, Vistas. There's a little piece of open space that we got from Vistas, which is adjacent to French's Hill, and that's our parking area and entrance. That's the area I was working on some selective clearing, because most of what came in was your multiflora rose and all that stuff, but in there were some little saplings of black walnut and ailanthus, and to pick through that and figure out what should stay and what should go, because a really large old sugar maple was cut down right there at the entrance, I think by the city of Shelton, as a safety issue, and that's just going to release everything. So but
On my reference, Teresa, was this the area that they had like a sales trailer and a construction trailer?
Yeah, further in the back, yeah, but that was like the drive for them to get it, and that's our parking area, is where they had made that big gravel parking area for us right there. But anyways, I knew there was a little pond in there, but I didn't know that it was concrete. It's like a perfect little oval, like you could go ice skating on it. Yeah, it's a little concrete pond, and
What's
because I
its
was
size?
cutting, pardon?
Size?
Maybe like 90 feet long. Yeah, it's big. It's big. I have no idea how deep it is. But I'd seen it from a distance, like in 2006 or 7 or whatever that was. But never walked right up to it because there were briars and stuff in the way. But now that I cleared some of that out, I was able to walk right up to it. And it's an attractive little pond. Some big.
Can we tell by any aerial maps if this was something that was done by Toll Brothers during their construction activity, or if it was preceding that?
The pond? Oh no, it's old.
Oh,
It's an old
okay.
farm pond.
Oh.
I don't know
Is
why.
Is there any chance you saw Jim Tate doing his laundry out by that cement pond?
Possible,
I could see people.
possible.
All I could think of was ice skating, but I don't know. I've got most of that trail blazed as well, with some arrows tacked onto the trees, and there's going to be some trails work parties. Bill can talk about that. And then I think the only other thing I would bring up is there was an issue behind Capewell Park and the Canfield Drive open space. There's 2 properties, open space properties that abut each other. One is Parks and Rec and one is Conservation. And I had a call about there was some ATV activity and some other activity out there. And I went out and looked and GPS'd it. And there was this very fresh ATV road leading right behind the ball fields, right below the ball fields, with a whole bunch of boards, like planks, big like sheets of plywood, but it was particle boards. It was all very fresh, like a dozen of those, and string all over the place. And then somebody cleared it was clearly kids, 500-foot long trail through, I think a lot of it was wetlands, and they marked it with about 500 feet of yellow, like kind of like mason string, that bright yellow string along the entire length of it. So, but the tracks led right to a house. So I was able to send them a letter, and I talked to Ron Herrick. He's going to have some guys clean up the boards, and I also referred that to the Shelton Police Department and John Cook. So we'll see.
Very good.
It's just some kids.
Yeah.
But you want to nip that. I think it was all very, very recent. Probably somebody got an ATV for Christmas.
Yeah, well, they had a 4-day break recently with Friday and a Monday off, so on President's Day, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean where they like a footpath had been built as well, and with that yellow string, and it was all very wet terrain. I mean, I could see it was very, very wet terrain, but clearly whoever had gone in and cleared that didn't understand the degree to which it's going to be muck later on I mean, it was done in the winter.
Yeah.
For sure. And that's all I got.
Okay, very good. Thank you much. Bill Dyer.
Quick
Or Ed,
question.
you want to say something? Go ahead.
Turning back to French's Hill, first off, kudos to Teresa for tackling that starting to clear trail. But Teresa, would it be of any help if we showed up someday in the late spring with the land trust tractor with its brush hog attack to tackle some of the vines that you're talking about, the ones with the prickers on them, and I don't know if it does any good to mow them down. I know they grow back, but maybe for clearing some of it out. It's not too far from Bruce's house.
Yeah, you have a brush hog.
Yes.
I don't know. It's an interesting, yeah, it's interesting.
Think about
Well,
Think about it.
the
yeah.
city actually did show up with their brush hog and widened the entrance area. So that's why we're actually able to see that pond, I think.
No, that was my clearing. That's why you can see the pond.
Oh, okay. But yeah,
I think it's a great offer for land trust, but if the city has equipment, resources and availability to do it, great. But the spring, no matter who does it, would be a good timing.
so yeah, well, actually, that's going to be our work party for the 12th. So we'll all have a much better feel after that. What else needs to be done?
Which is a perfect transition into Bill Dyer with a trails report.
Well, Teresa covered the need for the erosion control and planting on the left side of the barn. As far we had one work party because of weather and did some work on the rec path. As I think we're looking at National Trails Day, June the 4th, I think it is, as to whether we want to participate with a public hike or whether we'll not. 2 years ago we had one scheduled, and of course it was canceled. So we got a few ideas, but we got until the April meeting to make a decision on that. And the issue of the new monopoles is certainly come up because it'll cross the new trails at French's Hill, but more importantly, it's going to come right across the rec path and Great Ledge and that whole area. So we're going to try to schedule a meeting with them this month to go over exactly where they want the poles to be and how they're going to go in. Obviously, there's going to be giant cement trucks coming in to pour the foundations and all that. So that's
to refresh
scheduled.
everybody's memory, the Eversource is going to be upgrading all of their powers, which have been there for quite many years. And they have met with the Trails Committee once before, and we recognize
This was
that.
just with me and Bill. They didn't meet with the Trails Committee.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Just the two of us, right?
The construction of it is going to be quite massive. But the reason that Bill and Teresa met with them is because they had reached out to the mayor's office, and the mayor asked them to directly touch base with Teresa and the trails because of the impact that it would have on those. So we're going to keep the city engineer in the loop on what we've discussed, but obviously we're advisory, but there are some areas near Oak Valley Road and maybe some other spots where they're going to have to vary outside of their current utility easement area. And so
Right.
The main thing is, obviously in any construction, it's going to be massive, but it's the restoration and how it's put back in place, especially in areas that are near wetlands and such. Ed, go ahead.
Are they removing, as part of the process, the old pylons or using these to be next to them?
These, the old pylon, the old towers will be removed. They are a
Okay.
safety issue. I had actually thought maybe one could be left, and with no wires attached to it, you could make some sort of a observation tower. But,
Christmas tree.
that's I guess not going to be as easily done. But I think maintenance and concern about they've been there a long time.
Although just 2 years ago, they went in with a massive effort to put cement footings around every, the bottom. It's just amazing. I guess only a monopoly utility could spend money 2 years ago to reinforce these things they're going to take down next year. It just boggles the mind. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, obviously it's a utility that has to maintain their infrastructure, and we know with things with hurricanes and such, they're examining their entire infrastructure network to make it hardened and improved. So they maybe even be able to handle more voltage, lines on these towers. I don't know anything about that. All I'm concerned about is the impact on our trails network, primarily the recreation path around that Route 108 Oak Valley area, and the others. I mean, the Turkey Trot Trail will be impacted and such, but we have to think about how the public using an area that is now going to be a construction zone of a substantial hazard, it may be out of use for a period of time. So,
right, and then particularly the rec path, that'll be a major issue in town, I'm sure.
Yeah. How about the barn bill? Update on that.
Well, the weather has been such that we haven't done anything. Basically, the next step is to get the polyurethane done. It's a 1/4. Well, the outside's totally done, and the inside is 1/4 done. I did talk to Mike, who's in charge of the painting crew here in town, and he knows we're very anxious, and I expect it to. We will have to heat the barn in order to get it painted, or polyurethane, I should say. So anyway, it's in progress, but it's very slow. Then after that, we'll need to get the electricians, and Chris is certainly involved with all this, the town maintenance guy. So we've got some of the materials there for the electrical work. So we're getting close, and actually, Terry picked up a bunch of hooks and whatever that we can use to put the hedge trimmers and other leaf blowers and all that. So we're moving, but pretty slow. But now that, obviously now that it's warming up, we're going to move faster. So I would hope we could have like a formal dedication in June or something about that area.
It might be nice to put a deadline of National Trails Day to have an unveiling. Even if we don't do a hike trails event, it would be nice to unveil that on Trails Day.
I agree. So, yeah, I think it's always good to have an external date, even if it's not quite met.
Sure.
So, good.
Okay. And Ed McCreary, anything you want to offer regarding the Shelton Canal Locks project with SCDC? Generally, what's going on?
Lost my Zoom button, sorry. Yeah, just today, I think I previously reported the mayor narrowed down the applicants to 2 different firms and wanted them to submit price estimates for doing the preliminary engineering work. And one was received like a month ago, and the second one just came in today. So Mr. Grimmer's office at SCDC will be reviewing them. And then I don't know if he's going to call another meeting or what, but so sort of like someone else just commented, Bill did. It's progress. It's very slow, very grinding, but it's progress.
This when we started on this concept, we were inspired by a video that was done on a dam in Ansonia, and doing a drone video and making kind of a presentation that could be used in case there had to be any kind of selling the concept to the public for funding, financing, or just in general.
Right.
Is there anything that we need to think about on that concept of the whole project?
So before we got to the point of being authorized to put out an RFP, we did follow up on that concept and the Kennytown Dam video, as I recall.
Right.
And we took the materials and we were thinking of hiring the Naugatuck Valley COG, who has staff to put together a similar presentation video. And they said, no, you don't have to pay us. Shelton's a town. We would do it for free. So we sent them, they said, send us all your materials. And we sent them, old postcards of the canals and the history. And I think some of you guys even shared some history documents with me. I went and met with Jack Welch, the former chair of the Valley United Way, who was a pet peeve of his.
Right.
He had some historical information. And then for those of you who have been following the very active postings by, is it Mr. DeJoseph of Derby on the Derby Historical Site website, the Historical Society website? I'm sure I'm misstating his name. I contacted him. He sent me some information. So we sent all that to the COG, and it went dead silent. We've never heard boo. So I was just thinking last week we should follow up. But in the meantime, each of the engineering firms, to various degrees, did that on their own. So I forget exactly which one, but one, for example, did a video flyover. They interspersed historic photographs. They interspersed photographs of similar projects they had done and what they looked like before and what they looked like after. And so any of those could equally be, converted into a sales pitch project as they used to sell their services to the city. So one way or another, we'll get one of those. Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how this initiated and if that had ever come to fruition with something, but it looks like we got all the parts and it's just easy to assemble it into a presentation. Yeah. Anything else to add on that with the Shelton Canal? Hearing nothing. Regarding some inland wetlands applications that we've given comments on in the past, the development on Ivy Brook, that there's a PDD application for 63 dwellings. At the last planning and zoning meeting, they did read our letter into the record during the public hearing. It was interesting to hear the applicant's attorney, Dominic Thomas, mention that our request for open space or a fee in lieu of is conceptually the kind of thing like impact fees. Sounded like he was amenable to that concept about developers giving an impact fee, whether it be for parking in downtown or an open space set aside. So it's just the concept maybe to just put in the back of your brain about impact fees and how those are accomplished within Connecticut law and how they might serve our conservation purposes. The Board of Aldermen on February 22nd, they approved the purchase of the 25-acre parcel on Old Mill Road for $1.2 million, with the initial payment of $322,500 to come from aldermanic bonding. There was no reference from planning and zoning for it, no 824 referral for it. That amount is a 1/4 payment of a $1.2 million purchase price that was stated. I have not heard anything about whether this is going to be for a conservation open space purpose. It is currently the location of the Bear Plain Farms Christmas tree farm. There is limited access to city streets, and so that may have impacted the price to be $1.2 million for 25 acres. I don't know, but there's nothing stated either in the aldermanic meetings authorizing the mayor to go forward or approving the purchase as to what the purpose for the city is of purchasing the property. From a conservation perspective, it does link our on the tail end of the Clappick farm that comes down close to Old Mill along Laurelwood and then connecting down towards the Farmill River. So it, in my eyes, has a perspective of open space value, but that has not been stated by the people who make decisions.
Who owns the 25 acres?
It was owned by an LLC that's with the Wells family. It's it's not Royal Wells, it's the other Wells.
Yeah.
Lester or whatever. Yeah.
Then Laura Wells is one of the members. She has a dog training operation that runs out of there, Paws for Wellness or something like that. But the predominant use of the property is for a Christmas tree farm, and they run it as the Bear Plains Christmas tree farm. They had a gap there for 1 or 2 years where they weren't actively promoting it, but I live in the area and they do post some signs and some local telephone poles, and most of the people local to my neighborhood, if they're getting a tree, that's where they go to, because it's a reasonable price and it's not overwhelmed with reservations and other issues that some other farms operate under. But it is it's interesting is that it is one of 3 harvest your own Christmas tree farms in Shelton. We've got the Jones Family Farms, the Fairview Tree Farm, and the Bear Plains Farm. And I think that's something to be proud of. That Shelton can have still 3 active Christmas tree farms.
Never knew it was even existed till this came up.
I assume
Yeah,
just
if you
brought
look
it
at any
down
of
to
the
farm.
like Google Earth imagery, and you can scan backwards through a couple of years, you can see how they have actively been planting. I mean, I can't comment for how they're maintaining them or pruning and trimming them, but it is a place that in my neighborhood people gravitate towards because it's very convenient.
Do you have to recuse yourself because of the competition aspects?
No,
Just kidding.
I haven't been asked or involved in the whole thing, so that's kind of the surprising part of it. But if it came up, I probably would.
I don't think you have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, well,
does it abut the property that?
Clapping.
No, Bob. I'm talking about from the other direction where Bob Cinto's tower is, or office building.
Yeah, let me share a screen for a moment, and that might help kind of give a reference to things. Looking at our cities. So let me go over to that area. Okay, so here we are. So this property here was the Clappick, one of the Clappick properties that one of the brothers owned that parcel, and then the other one next to it, the brother owned that parcel. So those 2 were purchased. We have the property behind Long Hill School, and then there's the property behind, oh, that's actually Long Hill School there, I'm sorry.
Long Hill School.
Yeah. This was the property behind that small subdivision that occurred to the left or the south of Long Hill School.
I think we own that. That's open space, yeah.
Yeah, this area here you can see off of the end of Longview is the community garden. That's at the high point, kind of a ridge line that goes on Longview heading out that way. And then if I were to just kind of continue this over the other direction, this is the Fall Farm, and that connects out towards the Housatonic River direction with some of that open space. Looking back here, this is the property that was purchased. Wells Holding LLC was the name, Jim. As you can see from that acreage, there was just really the frontage on Old Mill Road down here at the end. Controls Drive is a private road, and it's not a city street, so there was limited frontage. Certainly they could bring in a road from there, and there are some wetlands. You can see a pond, a couple ponds on the property, and you can see mostly it being Christmas trees. But there, in terms of linkage directly from the Clappick to the Wells Hollow, there is no direct linkage, but on Controls Drive, this parcel here, there is a pond right here on the corner of it, and that's effectively open space preserved because they're not going to be able to do anything on that. I used to ice skate there.
What's the piece just south of that? Is that a private residence?
Yeah, so that is kind of weird. The city's zoning maps are not really well maintained, but there is
Wells property.
Laura Wells owns, in partnership with her mother, I believe, this parcel. And then to Bill's point, I'll just go down a little bit. The Wells owned the property all the way down to the river. And when they built this part that was it says Beard Sawmill LLC. It's actually owned by Bob Cinto. That was their free split. So then in subsequent years, when they wanted to build the houses up here, actually, sorry, I take that back. They had done the free split for the houses, and then the subdivision down there was separate. So any subdivision further the property would have required open space. The this large acreage here, was the first PDD. You can see it's PDD 1 in the city of Shelton. That used to be the Cheeseboro Ponds facility. It was a research and laboratory, and there's a significant acreage of open space that's just privately owned, and it's not dedicated as open space, but given the topography of that land, it's likely to remain open space forever. So in terms of wildlife migration from the Wells parcel that the city has now purchased down towards the Farm Mill River, I think it has value as an open space characteristic, but I have not been involved or asked anything from the administration regarding this purchase.
So access to Beard's Sawmill or whatever road is not available at this point?
Beard Sawmill Road.
No, that's south.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. There's no, if you're thinking of like a hiking trail or something, Bill, no. There's no public trail capability on this parcel because it's privately owned. I do know that when they built it as Cheeseboro Ponds in the first PDD, there was a hiking trail for the tenant employees to enjoy. I think there might have even been stations where they did like exercise regimens. Like there was one at the high school at one time too, where you got to station 1, you did 25 jumping jacks, and then you did station 2, you did a couple push-ups, that kind of
So it was down by.
Aspetuck had the same thing.
Yeah, but it is not public land. It has an open space character and provides wildlife migration and natural habitat and so on, but it is not public land. And even though the city owns this, I would suspect, given the nature that it has a commercial activity going on it with the Christmas trees, I'm not sure how that's worked out, but I don't think you would be building a trail through this area.
Okay.
And again, it has not been stated by the administration for what purpose we are purchasing that property. I will again say, I think it's a great thing to purchase, even though I'm in the neighborhood and maybe biased. I think it does provide linkage for wildlife habitat and just open space corridor.
Interesting.
Any other questions on
Very
that?
interesting.
Next item on our agenda, in terms of open space, I did reference maybe earlier on, but I'll just reference it now, that the open space trust account, the finance department did give us a transaction log from 2012 to current. But as a transaction log, I really would say it's just an opening balance, an in and an out, and a closing balance. There's really no transaction occurrences within a course of a year that I can cross-reference against, for instance, fee in lieu of payments that came through planning and zoning approvals. So there's a little more digging has to be done into it, but I'm glad that the finance department has given us some information to get started with. So in reference to that, I do not yet have an idea of when the Wesley Drive open space was sold, where those funds were deposited to. I hope they went to the open space trust account, but I have not yet confirmed that. The open space trust account as a point, and I don't know how this occurs, but it has a negative balance, even though it's an asset account. So, and at one point it was an asset account that was in negative several $100,000. So I have my suspicions, but I won't say publicly on here as to how that occurred, but there was some, as we all know, some unfortunate transactions in the finance department. And I need to dig deeper as to why our open space trust account has a negative balance. But in essence, there's not money sitting there that we can act promptly to at least put a deposit down. Let's say, for instance, the Wells property was very adversarial in trying to get a purchase, and they said, okay, well, we'll take it if you can give us this much right now. The open space trust account is supposed to give us that liquidity to act promptly in competition with a developer who might be looking at the property. So fortunately, right now, apparently the aldermanic bonding capacity is there to do it. But if it was not, the open space trust account is specifically meant to serve that purpose, but it's kind of hard to do that when you have a negative balance.
Well, wait a minute. How can the trust account have a negative balance?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, why don't we ask that question?
I am in the midst of asking. I gave them a little latitude because in the budget process, I gave them 2 months, and then I gave them a reminder, said, hey, we asked you 2 months ago, in a kind way, that we'd like a report. And they did get it to me, but it's really an opening balance, inflow, outflow, ending balance.
What was the opening balance?
Well, give me a moment and I will pull it up.
2012 is where you're starting?
Let me go over to that and look. Here we go. Download that. Open that with my Excel. Give me a moment here. I got to open Excel, and then dealing with a rather slow internet connection at this location.
Well, it's not critical tonight. I just asked the question later.
Yeah, I'll get it for you here. We'll get it pretty quick.
We can bring it next.
You won't have an answer though as to how it's negative.
No, but maybe in sharing with you what I was given,
2012.
it might give me an indication as to what more questions I might want to ask.
Yeah, in 2012, I'd be curious to know what the balance was.
I suspect, again, Jim Tate issued a rubber check. He bought something he shouldn't have. If in doubt, blame Jim Tate.
Most people do.
Or Sharon Shannon, I guess.
See how thick this skin is, Ed? Very thick.
All right, so this is the ledger's file that was sent to me. And if we go back to 2012, we had a positive balance of $32,000 odd. There was some funding from the general fund of $315,000, and then some legal expenses and a purchase off Mohegan Road for $312. But then 2013 shows a negative balance. And then there's some mention here of purchases on 27 and 35 Old Town Road, which would have been over by the Koski.
Right.
And then 2014 now shows a positive balance and a purchase on Ucati Trail, which would be in Pine Rock Park.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But then as I go forward, there's been little activity in 2015 and 16 and
Well,
17.
wait a minute. How do you go from 152 or 140, 148 to
I
a
don't
negative
know.
124?
I don't know.
That doesn't make any sense.
It does not make sense to me at first glance. I know that municipal governance and finance works a little different than our own P&L statement, but
Oh, it does. How's that work?
I don't know.
Not as well as you
Well, I
would
think
hope.
we ought to be educated.
Yeah, I agree. I'm letting you know though that we're finally getting some information from the finance department that requires a little more insight.
All right.
But I can say that this line item here, funding from the general fund, that line item is showing that there has been, maybe it's a different line item here. Is it open space fees? It's saying that these were open space fees of nearly $31,000, $37,000, $8,400.
Where does it say that it's open space funding?
Unfortunately, I didn't freeze my titles here, but if you look all the way over, open space fees, if I were to click that as an entire,
Oh, I see. Okay.
it's open space fees. Now, I can't imagine that there's been open space fee in lieu of $31,000 or $37,000 in a year. But I need to get the information from Alex as to what the P&Z has approved and try to correlate some sort of a number against this. But I'm not getting a ledger here. All I'm getting is just a summary detail. It's not really detail in my book.
Okay. We'll look into it. All right.
Just moving on. I just want to let you know that there's things behind the scenes that are being worked on, and we're
I used to get something that was a lot more detailed from Kathy. Harder to follow in some ways, but yeah, they used to just give me a print. She used to give me a printout of everything she had, basically. It wasn't like what you got.
right. So moving on in the agenda, the budget that we submitted that. I've had no further response to it. It's pretty generic, but typically the Board of Apportionment and Taxation has met during once the mayor has submitted his budget, and then the Board of Aldermen go through this process with the Board of A&T. But if you've read anything in the papers, there's been some animosity between the Board of A&T and that traditional methodology. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen this year. With that, I already covered the open space trust account issues. So we're on to comments by members. I think I'll start actually. I think I shared with everybody via some emails. I've been cleaning out my mom's house as my dad still had some papers in it, and we've sold the house, so I have to get it ready by the middle of March. But in going through it, I found a letter where Mayor Kelly nominated my father to, recommended my father to serve on the Conservation Commission back in 1974. So that's pretty amazing. But what's more amazing is that as my dad started with the commission and he became vice president, he was taking a lot of hand notes, and I came across a notebook with all those hand notes. And in those hand notes, there was comments about reaching out to Bridgeport Hydraulic Company regarding the Shelton Lakes area and trying to see it preserved, and what they had before inland wetlands as a proposal. And the date of that would have been 1978. And when you think that we closed on the open space purchase of the Bridgeport Hydraulic properties in December of 98, and I only know that because that's when I joined the commission. The closing was like the month right after I joined. That's 20 years from 78 to 98 to accomplish something that obviously had great impact. And the same kind of thing can be said with the rec path, and how that was a vision of Terry Jones, and how that came to fruition with gathering some of the open space parcels at Huntington Woods and others to accomplish it. And that was a long-term project. And so I say this in the sense of one of the things we're talking about today and these days with the canal and the locks. It's not going to be an overnight project. It's going to take time. And to get to that finished product that is of value to the community, it's going to be, we're going to be involved in that for a while. So, but it was insightful also, the planning and zoning map from 1974 with Anthony Panico and Associates from 1969. It was on my dad's office wall, and it drew me to it. I mean, it's been there for a while, obviously, and I've seen it, but it drew me to it because the planning and zoning has before it a zone change for some properties near St. Margaret Mary's Church and the Board of Ed offices to change it from an R1 zone to an R2 zone. And in the process of reviewing that area, Alex discovered a lot of non-conforming lots. And as I looked at it, I said, those lots were built back when, the late 50s, early 60s. So why weren't they built as an R1? Because it had to be R1 zone back then. And then looking at the map in my dad's office, sure enough, yeah, it was R1 zone back then. So how did some of these lots get built as non-R1? It's interesting. History always is interesting. That's my 2 bits. I'll go to my right, and my screen is James Tate.
I have no words of wisdom tonight. I think
At
it's
the
all
moment.
said. I just try to take it all in as a youngster and trying to learn.
Bill Dyer, you're next in my rotation.
Well, sort of in that same vein, Tom, I became head of the Trails Committee, I think in 2002, 20 years ago. And I never expected the rec path to be completed in my lifetime. And we are about to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the completion of the rec path.
Wow. Seems like only yesterday we had a tent over there at the dog park, and the mayor making some comments and doing a little kind of a ribbon cutting kind of a ceremony. That was 10 years ago.
The music.
Wow. And music, yeah.
Haven't seen that since.
Right, the music.
Wow.
So some
Let's bring
things
back the
do.
music.
Ed McCreary, you're next in my circle of life here.
So last Thursday, they had an official ribbon cutting of the new surgical operating rooms at Griffin Hospital that were totally rebuilt. And so I had to give the opening speech. And I started out with saying in my very first meeting of the Conservation Commission, Terry Jones came in and announced he had this great idea. We ought to build a crosstown recreational path. And we just need to acquire a couple easements and rights of way over a couple hundred properties. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, that'll never happen. And then I related it to my first meeting as chairman of the fundraising committee for Griffin Hospital. Patrick Charmel came in and said, congratulations, now you've got a year to raise $2 million so we can finish building out this new surgical suite. And I had the same reaction. Oh my God, that'll never happen. And I reported that, but thankfully, according to my wife, I'm always wrong. And both did happen and both were accomplished. But I must say, I had no clue. I thought it was going to be like a cold tour. They were going to give tours of the operating rooms. They had actually kept all the staff, the hospitals, nurses, the doctors, the technicians to stay late. And as you went through each room, all dressed in surgical, hermetically sealed attire, they gave demonstrations. And it's all computer driven now. So it's just a simple example. If you're getting your knee replaced, back when my dad did it, you're sitting there hunched over the patient, trying to guesstimate how much to cut into the bone. Now the computer will not let the cutting blade go anywhere it's not supposed to go. You can only cut exactly what's been mapped out on the computer for the bone, what portion of the bone to be removed. So it fits 100% exactly the device they're going to implant. And of course, it's not, in the old days, they screwed it up into the bone and then they glued it on, cemented on. Now it's just a material that stimulates bone growth that grows within a few days into the new knee that you're putting on to lock it in place. It's the whole thing is just so fascinating. It's all controlled by robots and computers. It's just really amazing that our little hospital right here in the valley has all that equipment now.
Well, that is great news because after 4 days of skiing, I feel like I need two new knees.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Teresa, you're next in the round table circle.
Yeah, I'll pass. I don't really have anything new.
Okay, very good. I will mention one last thing. There's been some discussion. Ned McCreary's been involved with it and has referenced it in the past regarding an open space acquisition that we're attempting. And there's been some communication with the mayor's office and other parties. So maybe we'll have more to report on that next month.
Yeah, I hope to have some good news next meeting.
Good.
Anything else from anybody? Okay.
All good.
Terrific. I will say, as I like these style of meetings. I can be in Utah and have a meeting, and I can share my screen and everything. So I know the pandemic with masks and things are changing. I don't know how that is going to change the ability of people to have meetings for governmental agencies and commissions and such. I know this is allowed under a governor's executive order. I hope it will continue. I don't know, but if we can continue in this fashion, personally, I would prefer to do so.
I kind of miss going to bar 140 after our meetings, though.
You can still do that.
Still do that, Bill.
Well,
That's
you could also
true.
do it virtually.
Well,
There-
that's a little
I believe
tricky.
there's
I
a
started this meeting at
proposal.
5 o'clock here.
I believe there's a proposal pending right now under Freedom of Information Act to allow virtual meetings of this nature. But I guess, I assume the town will also have a say in that as well.
Well, and outside of our purpose, I will say that, I will have a dinner or, relaxing, whatever, and I'll watch a YouTube video of the planning and zoning. And the real nice thing about the streaming onto YouTube, which most people don't recognize, is that it automatically creates a transcript. And then you can search for a keyword. So I don't have to wait for a month for somebody's minutes to be prepared and hear what's going on or what they're thinking. I can actually, right after the meeting is held, open the transcript and search for a keyword and come upon it really quickly. Very beneficial. So for other reasons beyond my selfishness of wanting to operate our commissions meeting this way, I think there's a lot of benefits to citizens if someone are so inclined to want to know what's going on in the community.
Very good.
That said, hope to see you guys soon. All right.
All right.